All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Two Men in Black and White, an honest conversation. Brock Ganeles with me today as we continue our coverage of the unfortunate assassination, if you will, of Charlie Kirk, the conservative right-wing influencer, was gunned down yesterday at Utah Valley University, just north of Provo, Utah. And still, no suspect has been apprehended, but they did release an image of a person of interest. So the search continues for the unidentified shooter. That individual is obviously very dangerous and remains at large. Brock, I saw a clip that was very disturbing. Nothing nearly as disturbing as what I saw yesterday. The graphic murder of Charlie Kirk. Did you see that video?
I did.
I am shocked that it was allowed to circulate for as long as it did. And I haven't looked for it again, so I don't know if it's still up. What were your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure I'd seen someone shot and killed live. I'm trying to think in my life. Like, I'm trying to think back to a video that was that clear. I think that maybe only seen a couple others, but almost none that was sort of in essence that close up and sort of that clear a picture. So yeah, that was as like violent videos I had ever seen.
You know, Brock, it's the reason I left the television news business. Partly, you see stuff like that and you never forget it. I found a couple of bodies, well, 4 bodies in a plane crash. We saw, probably about a half a dozen police shootings, on the body cam, things that the general public never saw. But in the newsroom, we had the video and, we had to look at it and figure out how we were going to edit it and how we were going to present it to the public so it was palatable. But, you're never quite the same human being after you see, someone murdered like that.
Now I say that now it does remind me of other shootings I'd seen, because I remember the one kid that was running away from the policeman got shot from behind. There was the guy on the street in Arkansas who was like having mental issues, and the woman shot her. So there were definitely a few police shootings that I'd seen, but still this one this one was more up close and graphic than even those.
Yeah, Laquan McDonald was one that everybody saw.
Yeah. It was dark though, right? That was at night, if I recall.
Yep.
Look in the end, I'm really finding the reaction to it interesting. It's such a mirror on American society, and it's kind of like almost everyone is behaving in a way as you'd expect.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
You have a whole bunch of people on the left stately trying to take the high road.
Right.
You have a whole bunch of people on the right who have, as we said yesterday and predicted, moved immediately into retribution, political mode, had already determined that it, wrote the narrative that it was a left wing. We don't know that, right? We don't know anything about the shooter yet. But they've already, kind of, including Trump, right, and others, Boris Johnson, have already decided it was a political assassination from the left on the right in a play to silence Charlie Kirk or silence the right when we have no idea who that is. You have a whole bunch of yahoos on all kinds of social medias basically saying the worst of us, right? They're just saying shitty stuff, not being able to not either dance on his grave or look to start a mini civil war online. So it's like sort of everyone is playing the expected role, and there's very little thoughtfulness. And even some people who have made thoughtful comments, can you believe MSNBC fired Matthew Dowd for what was basically a kind of simple observational comment about who Charlie Kirk was as a media personality?
Right.
It was straight on facts.
What was inappropriate about what he said? I mean, you talk about the hateful words that Charlie Kirk used. You talk about him saying that, some gun deaths every year is kind of acceptable. We're going to that's a prudent deal, is what he said. We've got to sacrifice some gun deaths each year in order to protect the rest of the rights that are trying to be taken away from us. And he said that was a prudent deal. So pointing out Charlie Kirk's words, so a lot of people on my social media feeds were using his own words in the aftermath of his death and almost insinuating in a way that he had it coming because of those words. I didn't see a lot of people coming out and saying it, but they said it without saying it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he said that random deaths were acceptable, right? Because to maintain the Second Amendment for the rest of us. So I guess in that respect, what doesn't appear to be a random death, but could be, but probably not, right? It's a targeted death. But yeah, those are his own words. I mean, someone I saw on social media summed it up the best and said something like, I'm not condoning Charlie Kirk's murder. I don't find his murder acceptable, but Charlie Kirk would find his murder acceptable because that was his doctrine, that there were going to be some of us that die along the way for the Second Amendment. So, the argument was just like, in his own words, he would have found this, he's now just happens to be that casualty that he has been accepting, kind of his whole life. So I didn't understand the vitriol that comes with it, or the fact that, there always is an effort to whitewash people after they die. Everyone becomes better, right? We're all better when we're dead than when we're alive because all the negatives get washed away, and somehow it's improper to mention anything that was controversial or negative about someone. But I don't understand that. You are in death who you were in life, and we should all expect that. I don't expect to die and then have people say, not acknowledge that I was a complex human being with some good and some bad.
Yeah. I think Brock, you hit the key word on the head, the whitewashing of it. We don't want to talk about slavery anymore. We don't want to talk. So let's get back to what Matthew Dowd said, because it's right in line with your point. He said that Kirk was a divisive figure who's constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in. I mean, that is a balanced, level-headed assessment of who Charlie Kirk was.
Yeah, from maybe an ex-Republican, but from like a member of the Bush administration, who was clearly a pro-Second Amendment administration. And if you can't say that, then come on, then you're just being told that you have to bullshit your way through this. You can't have an honest conversation then if you're not allowed to say that. But I don't know Charlie Kirk very well. I did a lot of work on him right in the last 24 hours, like probably all of America did. He would not, he was a free speech guy. He said some of the worst shit anyone's saying out there. I disagreed with almost everything I heard him say on tape, right? But I did agree with his right to say it. I didn't like anything he said, but I agreed with his right to say it. That's America. That's America. You're allowed to say it. I mean, he walked up to the line and I feel like incited violence, and I feel like a lot of his comments were extremely derogatory and, to me, were negative for society. But that's just my opinion. Okay. You agree with me? Don't agree with me.
Hey, look, he's not going to get a whole lot of, flowers from the black side of the ledger. The things that he said about black and brown America were just absolutely awful. From welfare to gang violence, to whether or not a black pilot would be capable of flying an airplane. Mm-hmm. Here's a guy who didn't even have a college degree, dropped out of community college, right? Was denied entry to the West Point Military Academy. So, I don't understand, the reason why we have to go to such vitriol to make a political point, right? You have to, our politics has come now to the place where if we don't demonize someone or something or some group, then we're not really doing our job, because we won't be able to get the legislation through, right, to, quell the demonization, right? The demonizing things that those others are doing, right?
Yep. And, on top of that, what I worried about is happening, like you were saying, in the black community, like several HBCUs, not only canceled classes today, but tomorrow. Because they were worried. They probably got, I don't know if they got direct threats, but there was a lot of random threats out there. The DNC offices in Washington, D.C. got death threats, so they've warned Democrats. I know AOC canceled a speech she was going to give because she didn't want to be out there in the public, right? She didn't think the security level right now for people of color and people on the left has declined because there's a retribution mentality. It's as likely that this shooter is targeting Charlie Kirk because he was calling for a release of the Epstein files, as it is that he's like a left-wing, Antifa who shot Charlie Kirk because he didn't like Charlie Kirk's right-wing ideology. It's a coin flip at this point. My worry is that because Trump has already wants to use this politically and has set the tone that with an anti-Democratic Party tone, that we're not like when they kill this guy, they probably won't capture him live. That his footprint of manifesto or social media will get scrubbed or manipulated so that it plays into the narrative. We won't hear that maybe this guy loved Laura Loomer and he's listening to Laura Loomer who went and attacked Charlie Kirk just a week ago. I mean, it's as likely that was the trigger as anything else. But right now we're in the unknown, so cooler heads should prevail and we should be just in a wait and watch mode, right? And let's get the facts.
Yeah. Did you see this clip where the individual that posted it pointed out two individuals actually standing directly behind Charlie Kirk saying they were given signals, and then moments later Charlie Kirk is down and those guys are on the right side of Charlie when he's hit on the left side of his body. And here we go with the conspiracy theories, right? And I don't like it because we have no idea. You can talk to those two guys. Someone should have already spoken to them and come out and said, look, we spoke to Charlie's staff and this is what we know at this point. They saw where the shot came from. They saw a weapon. They were looking out into the crowd. We reviewed their video footage from their phone. Anything, right? But anything to stop, wildfire like this from spreading, right? But the Keystone Cops, Kash Patel and Bongino and these people are all over the place. I mean, they handled that thing yesterday like they had no clue what was going on.
It's terrible right from the start, right? First they had someone in custody. Somehow somebody got arrested for obstruction of justice. What did that person possibly do? Say, I didn't do it? Like, how did someone who just got hauled in obstruct justice at that point, right? But they, at first, they were already, posturing as if they had caught the shooter.
Right.
And because I was confused for like an hour. Like, did they have him? Did they not have him? I couldn't figure out what was going on. And it turns out they didn't. And then today they're giving out all kinds of tidbits of the evidence that they've gathered. And I just don't understand what the value is in telling the shooter what they've got on him, right? Like even like I saw someone point out, like the FBI said that they have a footprint. Right. Well, someone pointed out, well, if you tell them that, then you're just sort of tipping off the shooter to make sure that he destroys whatever footwear he had. Right? Yeah. You might not think to do it, but now you've kind of made it sort of a, hey, reminder out there.
Yeah. Put these in the incinerator.
So it just doesn't make sense. I don't see, I'm not sure what the value has been in talking about different pieces of evidence. Usually you don't disclose that. And then they waited like half a day to put out the composite or the photos who they think the shooter is. Right. Because they thought they were going to use AI and find the shooter without having to put it out and have the public's help. So I don't know why we gave away that 12 hours or so, because they thought, once again, they overrated technology, right? And thought technology was going to solve it for them. And I mean, the current composite is it any surprise that it looks like a young white guy? I mean, like 98% of all the shootings that we get. I mean, that's what he looks like. If that's the right person in the photo, it's sort of like what we all would have guessed.
And Brock, how many brown people do you think there are actually in Orem, Utah, right? North of Provo, I guess if we get closer to Provo, you'll see, some of the American Samoans or the Pacific Islanders that come to Utah because of their church affiliations. But out in Orem, I mean, Utah Valley University only has what, 950, 1,000 kids? I mean, not a lot of kids go there. It's a small school.
Is that right? Oh, I thought it was a big school. Okay, small school. I mean, there's no way like a brown or black person could have hopped up on a roof and got a shot off and then gotten away. Like, you would have stick out a sore thumb in Utah, right? I mean, so, but the narrative's been weird. Even some of the stuff we saw on our message boards was really weird. Like, hey, you guys, that was disgraceful what you were saying. How could you be happy about the death? I'm like, wait a second. Happy? We're too old for that shit. We're not like. Right. There's no joy in anyone getting killed. I barely knew who Charlie Kirk was, right? Like I boned up on Charlie Kirk after the fact. It's just, I
had 3 people say to me last night, who was this guy?
Yeah, like you just get painted with a certain brush. There's no, no one wants to have logic or even to leave open what is unknown and let it sit there as unknown till it's known instead of trying to fill in a narrative before it's known. It got me to thinking today is like, we still don't know. We have no idea why that shooter in Pennsylvania fired shots at Trump, right? He got killed. No idea. No, we still don't know. Like, was he doing it just to be famous? He was a MAGA kid, but we don't know. We don't know why Lee Harvey Oswald shot JFK. We don't know. I know you saw the movie and talked to Armstrong, but we do not know. We're never going to know. We have no clue what the real motivation was. Like, so this guy, if this kid kills himself or gets shot, we may never know what the reason was.
Right.
And sometimes you have to live with that. Sometimes.
But wasn't that by design? I mean, it was in Oswald's case. It seemed to be in the Butler shootings case. Oh, don't let the shooter speak. Right? That's how conspiracies work. I mean, all the people involved in the conspiracy in the JFK murder ended up dead mysteriously. Right?
I'd be surprised if this shooter lives. Like I think he's going to get killed because they're going to want to fill in a narrative. They're not going to want to let him speak and say why he shot. Right? They're going to want to fill in the blanks.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's problematic as expected. A lot of threats have gone out. I don't know of any random shootings yet today. So I guess that's made it a good day that 24 hours after Kirk's murder, we haven't had a retribution murder yet. So I'll kind of take that as a victory in the first 24 hours, but there's been a lot of threats.
And Brock, if I'm Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Jamie Raskin, Ted Lieu, Eric Swalwell, Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, I am laying low. Anything I'm doing is virtual. And I'm asking for a couple of units out in front of my house. I mean, think about what's going on. We had Josh Shapiro. They tried to burn down his house while he and his kids and his wife were in it. You had Gretchen Whitmer. There was a talk of kidnapping her, putting her on trial and murdering her, like some sort of citizen's arrest from these yahoos who think they are not sovereign citizens or whatever. Who knows the ideology behind that nonsense? We had the attempt on Trump. We've got this now. I mean,
yeah, you had the Minneapolis shootings, right? The state senator, like that was like point blank, right? That guy had a list also, right? But that was extremely targeted political violence.
Absolutely. So what do we do to put a stop to it? Allow people to buy more guns?
Trump is stripping away. Hey, you think Kamala Harris is going to be comfortable going on her book tour when Trump just stripped away her Secret Service protection?
Right. Now she can go with the California Sheriff's Department offered to pick up her.
Okay. So
duty. But it's not
nationally or just locally?
And now see, that's the thing. Because who pays for it if it's national?
Well, like you just said, AOC is going to ask for more protection. Well, who's she asking? Mike Johnson?
Right.
Trump? Like, who's going to give it to her? Right. Kash Patel?
No, you're right.
Pam Bondi? No.
Right.
That part of it is by design. This is intimidation by design. This is to keep people fearful. This is to keep the AOCs of the world from having large events where she's
Yep.
firing up the crowd in a contrary way to the current government, right? This is
What
a
does this
sort of,
remind you
this
of?
is Russia level, shit where you're intimidating the opposition. And that's where this is why the left doesn't want Kirk murdered, because now everyone on the left has to live in greater fear. Because
Yep.
this may trigger the right-wing crazies who we know are all armed to the teeth. And we know it even more now because our message board is full of right-wing crazies who are armed to the teeth telling us we don't know shit about guns.
Right.
Which I shrug my shoulder to. Like, I know enough about guns as I feel I need to know about guns.
Right.
They
You
kill a
pointed
lot
at
of people.
someone. If you pointed at someone, the result is going to be probably disastrous. And that's all I need to know. Right? But what does this remind you of, Brock? I remember a well-known gentleman who was painted as a communist who said he'd been to the mountaintop, but he may not get there with you. And regardless of the fear, regardless of the threats, he kept on preaching and kept on asking America to live up to its promise, knowing Dr. King knew full well he wouldn't see 40. He knew it. The FBI was on him, the CIA, the mob, everybody was invested in ending Dr. King because of the way he had galvanized the Black community and because of the way white America had listened to his message and said, you know what? It does make kind of sense. He's got a point there, right? Level-headed white Americans were in a lot of these marches as well. So, we are right back there. And now, I'm not AOC, right? I'm not her husband. I'm not Jasmine Crockett. I'm not her parents. I'm not her sister. I can't tell her to keep going. But gosh, if we wilt in the face of this intimidation, it will cost us our we've already lost the democracy.
They have to keep going. We have to encourage them to keep going. And the people have to be behind them. And we have to get out there. We can't just ask others to get out there and put themselves at risk.
Right.
Right. We're going to have to do it with them.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a dangerous time to be a high profile person in politics right now.
No,
and of course, as you predicted, right, the president came out immediately and inflamed the situation. Didn't even come close to toning it down, despite having zero, facts.
Right.
Still doesn't have any facts, right? He's just firing from the hip. He's just decided who he wants the shooter to be,
right,
to fit his narrative of a harsher crackdown.
Exactly. Here's a guy who is literally a coward. Right, assaults women, has no service record to speak of, no community service, no military service, nothing. It really has nothing positive to offer us in terms of leadership and just in terms of manhood. I mean, Donald Trump is not a man that I would want my child to emulate. And I don't know anybody else who would. And here we have Charlie Kirk's parents, who get that horrific call. His wife, he has a 3 and a 1-year-old that are going to grow up without their father, right? Daddy won't be there to walk his daughter down the aisle, won't be there to give his son the first set of keys and take that ride with him, right? Won't be there to teach him how to drive. Think about all that family has lost, and at what cost? At what price? Like, is this worth it? Right? I would love to go back and say, you know what? Is this worth it? Right? Think about all the lives that have been impacted now. Right? Because somebody's going to do something stupid.
I mean, he was but he got famous and he was wealthy and famous and a huge career trajectory by tapping in to, this right-wing Christian theocracy, white nationalism sort of, blood flow that is embedded in the American DNA, right? He tapped into that. So I'm sure he didn't expect this to be his end, but yeah, I mean, he was ambitious. You know,
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, it's unfortunate, but he was ambitious. I would bet it appears like he was this type of person, like he wanted, there are some people who talk that he could have been a presidential candidate down the road, because he had the fame, right? He had the name recognition. So it's sort of like a why not? But as you said that with the 3 and the 1-year-olds, it was reminding me that today was 9/11, right? And you have those families and you have the kids now. The 3-year-old now is like 27
Right.
and has lived their whole life like without their parents, whether they were in the buildings or whether they were first responders, that died, right? And it's like a reminder on how lives are never the same
Right.
after
You know,
tragic incidents like this.
I mean, think about it. I'll never forget. My wife and I got on a plane at the time. It was maybe a couple years after 9/11, and we were in Minnesota. And 4 or 5 gentlemen got on the plane. They were obviously Middle Eastern, Arab, and pulled out Qurans and started reading them. And, like I said to my wife, are you seeing this? And I was wigged out by it. And then there was another lady who was upset with the timing of the flight that it was late and we were flying direct from Minnesota to Atlanta, and she ends up getting removed from the plane. And then come to find out these Middle Eastern gentlemen are all sitting in the wrong seats. And so and I didn't want to say anything because I hate being profiled. I've noticed people following me around in stores throughout the course of my lifetime, and it's pissed me off. And so I didn't say anything, and when we landed, it was all good, right? And, about probably 10, 12 minutes into the flight, the guys sitting closest to me had put their Qurans away. But, it's one of those things that changes the trajectory of our lives forever, right? And how we think and how we view things and how we view people.
Each other, yeah. You don't want to feel that way, right? You don't want to feel that fear, but like it was palpable in that moment, and just in juxtaposing that time, like, and once again, like our collective behavior is, we're not proud of our collective behavior after 9/11, right? It's like, because when you have the rage and you want the retribution, right? A lot of atrocities went on after 9/11 to people that were entirely innocent because a narrative was being painted. That's not even getting into the fact that then we got into like a 2-decade war, right? And attacked the wrong country. That's before. I'm just talking about like in domestic America when we had this great solidarity in the first 24 hours and maybe even 48 hours. And in some places like New York, it lasted a real long time. But there were other Americans who were getting, tormented, intimidated, sometimes killed, right? Some Indian Americans got killed, even though they're like, we're not even Muslim. Like, even like the bigotry was even off, right?
Yeah.
But yet they got killed unnecessarily because somebody, because somebody wanted revenge in America. So you can just see how quick, anger and the bloodthirst for revenge leads to such terrible outcomes. And I worry that this is not a 9/11. Charlie Kirk getting murdered is not 9/11 to the level of 9/11, of course. But it has those vestiges, right? There's an element of it where already a narrative is being painted. Already there's talk of who needs to be like punished for it. And we don't even have the facts in yet. And, and now the one to worry about is the right-wing white man with the gun who's like ultra MAGA, who thinks this is his country. And now, he's already a pile of logs with gasoline on it, right? So we don't need matches thrown at that. And I feel like we're sort of maybe in that setting right now. And I don't see, very few people on the right are tamping down the rhetoric.
Not
right?
at all.
It's stayed heated. It's still up here. There's there's a handful, like even the governor of Utah was pretty measured in his comments. He, that was pretty good, right? But most of them, like Clay Higgins' comments about was fucking absurd, right? For a free speech guy. Yeah, for the most part, it's a very belligerent commentary that's still out there.
Without question. And now remember, this is the same right wing that, you know, thought January 6th was not a problem. Thought it, was a walk in the park. It's interesting. The hypocrisy is
Is so
mind-boggling.
thick.
Yeah, it's befuddling. And now that this has happened, and again, it's abhorrent. It makes absolutely no sense. What have you accomplished? I saw a comment today. The right wing sacrificed Charlie Kirk for the Epstein files. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, Charlie Kirk's death doesn't make the Epstein files go away. What does that even mean?
Nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
Absolutely
what does that
nothing
even
to do
mean?
with it.
And because you have 140 characters at your disposal, doesn't mean you have to use them to say stupid shit, right? Why don't you quote a Bible verse or something? Good Lord. It is ridiculous, the things that people are saying. And again, the lone wolf, right, which this appears to be, unless he was working in conjunction with the two guys standing behind Charlie Kirk. I don't think we'll ever know, because he's that high profile that I don't think we'll ever know, why his life had to be taken, right? Which is so unfair to this guy who was just out here, trying to make a difference, and in his defense, he thought he was making the world a better place. Now, we don't happen to agree.
Yeah, we totally disagree. Yeah, I get it. In this country, he certainly has the right to espouse his commentary, right? And he was a guy willing to debate topics. His forum was open debate. Now, obviously, in order to raise his Q ratio, right? His to inflame followers, he said a lot of extremely negative shit about others.
Yeah.
So, bigotry was his calling card, right?
No doubt.
Sexism was his calling card, right? So, look, I basically, having seen a lot of his commentary, I kind of disagree with almost everything the guy ever said, but I absolutely believe in his right to say it.
Right.
It's just that's America to me, right? You get to say shit that other people don't want to hear and not have to worry about retribution. We'll see what that retribution can. Hopefully, we're going to learn something about the shooter, and it's not just going to be Donald Trump's version of what the shooter's motives that becomes the story.
Right, and that's the sad part, that he's going to come out swinging. Well, he already did. 4 hours after this thing, he was already out with that video saying the radical left wing, blah blah blah. Whatever, because that's what he does, because he's a coward. Again.
Yeah, that was fucking absurd. That was a fucking disgraceful commentary from a president.
It absolutely was. And I appreciated some of the news outlets for not airing it. And I wish they would. We really need to stop letting some of these right-wing commentators come on television and espouse these crazy theories and views about what the left wing is doing. Like, what are you talking about?
Making shit up.
There was no Antifa in January 6th. There were no FBI agents running through January 6th. The FBI agents that were there were MAGA people, and they got arrested for it and held accountable, right?
It's a propaganda effort. It's intentional. They know they're lying. It's propaganda. Mainstream media definitely allows it, which is why independent media needs to ascend and take more of the eyeballs, because mainstream media is an epic failure. And MSNBC firing. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Because, nobody wants to get on Trump's bad side. Don't worry about the democracy. Don't worry about the republic. We'll fix it later. When? When Trump's dead? Like, when are you going to fix it? Right? Because he's doing everything he can to fucking break it.
Might be too broken.
Might be.
Maybe not today, but it might get there. It might move beyond repair.
Brock, I saw a couple of CIA spies, former spies, on YouTube that said, get used to it, because this is not going back to the America that we used to know. And they were advocating folks doing their due diligence to look for other places around the world to live. That's how bad it's got. Brock, you search expats on YouTube. You can find a ton of videos where people saying, yo, I left the US because it was batshit crazy and I live so-and-so now. It's all over the place. Like literally dozens and dozens and dozens of videos. What are you interested in? Thailand, Bangkok, right? I saw one just the other day on Vietnam, Panama, Costa Rica, Belize. You name a country, people are doing the research. Other countries are actually giving out incentives for us to come, making the process easier for us to come and become citizens of that country.
Because Americans have money and they figure it's going to help their economy. If Americans come, they'll spend.
Yeah, and Americans will bring a shit ton of money with them, build houses, pitch into the economy, buy TVs, and buy cars, bicycles.
Yeah, increase the quality of life of the whole community.
The whole community, absolutely. Yup. Thanks, Donald Trump. Thanks, MAGA. It is what it is, bro. All right, man. We're at 38 minutes. We're out of time, bro.
I got my quick hit. My quick hit today, I'm leaving from right here, going to get my COVID shot. Kathy Hochul in New York. Became a part of that consortium to fight against RFK. And a week ago, 3 days ago, I could not make a appointment. Today, got one at the CVS, and I'm getting the latest COVID shot. So white America kind of, in certain pockets, has won that battle in the blue states. So there's blue state healthcare and there's red state healthcare now.
And I'm in the red state. I
don't know
what the closest blue state is. What, Maryland?
You might not get...
They got a Kroger in Maryland? I mean, please. I got to drive all the way to Maryland. I mean, it's insane, bro. Like, I need my COVID shot. I'm not playing any games with COVID.
It sucks. I'm getting it in 15 minutes.
All right, brother.
All right, Mark. Always a pleasure. I'll talk to you tomorrow. All right.
Peace.